Your Expeditions into Spirit guide, Val Jon here. For centuries, the ruins of Chichén Itzá have been described as monuments of astronomy, mathematics, and sacred power. But what if the ancient Maya were tracking far more than the movements of the sun, Venus, and the moon? Hidden within the architecture of this legendary city are clues suggesting the Maya possessed an astonishing understanding of planetary cycles, celestial timing, and perhaps even humanity's relationship to the motion of our entire solar system as it moves through the Milky Way galaxy. In this expedition, we journey into one of the greatest ceremonial centers of the ancient world to investigate whether Chichén Itzá functioned not merely as a city, but as a vast cosmic observatory encoding knowledge modern civilization is only beginning to comprehend. What did the Maya truly know about the heavens, and how did they know it?
So we continue our expedition into spirit here in the northern Yucatan. We're here at the ruins of Chichén Itzá, and behind me is the Temple of Kukulcán. And this is an absolutely amazing site. We move from the deep waters of the cenote to the inspirational structures that revered the stars and the heavens and the cosmos. So this is a temple that was designed and built by the Maya as a testament to their vision, to their aspirations, to their inspiration in terms of what was called the Grand Astrological Order. And the Grand Astrological Order was a way for the Maya to take the infinite expressions of spirit, the infinite expressions of divinity, and to bring that grand awareness all the way down into their everyday human lives. And this site here at Chichén Itzá is a huge complex that's barely excavated. There's only 30 structures that have been revealed out of over 200 or 300. And this complex was like a campus that was dedicated to tracking, measuring, and understanding this grand astrological order that the Maya conceived and had vision for. And it wasn't just to understand the stars or for scientific purposes or to be able to track planets for warring times or crops. There was something far more incredible that the Maya were doing here at this site and in other sites all through the Yucatan Peninsula. And it had to do with the Maya grasping, embracing, and understanding what they considered to be the axis of the cosmos, the grand galactic spiritual wisdom that they knew existed in the stars, in the heavens, and this whole complex was designed to measure the movements of the planets, of constellations, to provide the Maya with the information they needed, the orbital information of these planets and celestial bodies, not just to understand where they were in the cosmos, but to be able to use it as a pathway in order to deliver themselves to this sacred infinite wisdom, which they called Hunab Ku, or the central axis of the cosmos. So this pyramid behind me, although it's majestic, it's beautiful, it's cultural in terms of its archaeology, there's something remarkable about this pyramid. It's designed specifically to be able to track precisely the spring and the fall equinoxes of the Earth as it revolves around the sun. It's a huge measurement tool that the Maya used in order to grasp the movements of spirit. For the Maya, the movements of spirit existed in the cosmos, and every time they would explore or discover or measure, it wasn't that they were just understanding the world without or as above. They were also understanding the world within or as below. Because for the Maya, to understand and grasp the cosmos meant for them to understand and grasp the inner cosmos of themselves, the parts of them that were invisible, that they couldn't see, but they knew were there. For them, the connection between infinity and the finite existed as a reality. And so what we're going to do is we're going to explore some of these ruins and discover how the Maya tracked and measured this incredible information that would deliver them to that kind of spiritual and visionary awareness. To understand the Maya's grand visionary awareness, as well as its spiritual significance, all we need to do is ask a simple yet visionary question. Why would the Maya build this massive pyramid to track orbital patterns? Because they were visionary enough to consider that if indeed the Earth revolved around the Sun, then the Sun in kind must revolve around something far grander, the galactic center of all creation, or Hunab Ku. To know for sure, though, the Maya cosmologists needed a second orbital data point as a way to validate that the Earth indeed revolved around the Sun. Because if they could get the data from another planet that it revolved around the Sun, that would give them 2 points of data, which is exactly what they needed to be able to project into the cosmos and find the center axis of all creation. So what they did was they built an observatory right here next to the Pyramid of Kukulcán, where they could precisely track and measure the orbit of Venus. So here is where the Maya measured their second data point in order to determine that the Earth actually revolved around the Sun. This is called the Venus platform, and from this structure the Maya got a fix on the Sun that was different from what they got from the Temple of Kukulcán. And that second fix, that second data point, gave them what they needed to know, that the Earth and Venus both revolved around the Sun. This was an epiphany for the Maya, because they weren't sure, but once they had the second data point, that's why they were so interested in Venus, is it gave them that confidence, it gave them that data, that yes, indeed, not only does the moon revolve around the Earth, but the Earth revolves around the Sun and Venus revolves around the Sun. That meant that the other planets that they were looking at, Mercury and also Mars, also revolved around the Sun. That gave them the vision of the solar system, an absolute shift in their consciousness and their understanding of their place in the cosmos. And naturally, the most organic, natural question that the ancient Maya cosmologists asked was, well then, what does the Sun revolve around? If the moon revolves around the Earth and the planets revolve around the Sun too must revolve around something. Now they were on to the galactic awareness, to the galactic visionary awareness of Hunab Ku, the center axis of the cosmos that they were seeking in terms of where spirit lived, where it existed, where its origins were. So the Maya took everything they had and began to study the cosmos. They began to study constellations of Pleiades and Orion. Every star constellation they could fix their temples and their measurement systems on, they did, and they got more and more information. The Maya were masters at being able to take the cosmological and bring it down right into everyday life. I want to point out the base of this huge temple complex. You'll see two serpent heads. This is a double representation of paradox. What the Maya did was they took the philosophy of paradox and they related it to everything in their lives. So everything from the finite of being human, all the way to the infinite, all the way to the stars, all the way to Hunab Ku, the center axis of the entire universe, and how to really embody the paradox of infinite wisdom and how to bring it down into a person's finite life. This is what the cosmology of the Maya was so brilliant at, was being able to integrate things that are vast right down into everyday life. So here at the Temple of Kukulcán, they measured the orbits of the Earth, and over at the platform of Venus, they measured the orbits of Venus around the Sun. That gave them those two perspectives to be able to realize that the Sun was at the center of the solar system. Now the Maya took this incredible epiphany, this grand astrological order, and they put themselves to task. How do you take something that's so vast, so infinite, and bring it down into everyday life so people can actually embrace those kinds of principles? There's one specific way the Maya went about it that was absolutely brilliant. They devised 3 calendars, and these 3 calendars worked like the gears in an old-time watch. There was a huge gear, and that huge gear is called the long count calendar, and it actually is 7,880 years, which is 1/4 of the orbit of the solar system around its galactic center in our galaxy. Absolutely phenomenal measurements the Maya did in terms of getting a glimpse of the orbit of our solar system around Hunab-Ku, around the center axis of our galaxy. That was the long count calendar, getting a glimpse of that movement of spirit. The next gear is a smaller gear in the watch. And it was brilliant what the Maya did. They made a solar calendar that interacted like the cogs with this huge long count calendar, and this middle count calendar of 365 days took this infinite wisdom and it actually geared it down so that the Maya could look at the sun, and during the spring equinox, the fall equinox, and different times of year, they could celebrate this Hunab-Ku, this infinite spiritual wisdom and knowledge, and practically bring it down on an annual basis. Incredible way to translate that which is untranslatable actually into human experience. But the real brilliance of the Maya was when they created the short count calendar, which is the 3rd smaller gear that interacts with the 2nd gear, which interacts with the huge long count gear. This smaller gear was composed of 260 days in 20-day cycles, and each of those 20 days represented a spiritual principle that was ungraspable at the level of Hunab-Ku, at the long count. Barely graspable at the solar count, but still annually you could recall certain spiritual principles. But to bring it down into 20-day cycles where you can actually practice spiritual and human lessons on a daily basis and repetitively every 20 days was literally brilliant by the Maya, to be able to take that which is indescribable and bring it right down into people's everyday lives. And that was one of the main purposes of the 3-tiered calendar, was to translate the infinite into the finite. The Maya were absolutely brilliant in being able to embody the spiritual world, the upper world, with the middle world, which is our everyday consciousness, and the underworld, which is those deeper fears underneath us, inside of us. To be able to grasp and hold all 3 is absolutely incredible. What an empire, what a people, and we're so humbled and thrilled to be able to have the opportunity in expeditions into spirit to explore more of this fascinating philosophy and how it was brought into everyday Maya life.
As we leave Chichén Itzá and head southwest to Uxmal, we take the first of 5 spiritual lessons with us, the powerful insight of developing visionary awareness. Such development has more to do with expanding where we see from than focusing on what can be seen. When I was a boy gazing up into the heavens at night, I wasn't just viewing the billions of stars twinkling in the vast expanse of space with my physical eyes. I was also envisioning the vast expanse of unknown terrain existing within my own heart and mind and soul. This kind of inner viewing arose within me like a mystery, a wonder, a fascination, and more than anything, a deep humility. It was a humbleness of envisioning myself as a minuscule part of an infinite cosmos. So small, yet so fortunate to just be alive. For beyond words and concepts, and even beyond beliefs and faith, I opened myself to visionary awareness. I experienced a glimpse into God. For a moment, I viewed through the eyes of spirit and saw how the Almighty might witness its own universal creation. As a boy, I knew not about the vast dominion of grace and spiritual awareness available. But now as a man, and after beholding Chichén Itzá, I'm graced with a sacred awareness, a resolute knowingness that I and all of life indeed revolve around what the Maya called Hunab Ku, the central axis of all creation. And by knowing so, I'm part of the grand cosmological order, a way of being alive in which I must, by choice, live in accord with the greater revolutions and evolutions of existence. So how does one integrate such expansive visionary awareness into their everyday lives? Perhaps by reminding ourselves during each sunrise and sunset that life itself is a profound gift, and that our fulfillment and happiness doesn't arise from what we see or what or who we're with, but instead, as the result of visionary enthusiasm, we bring into what we behold. In other words, rather than waiting to see or feel something that will bring us to life, we envision ourselves into the responsibility of bringing aliveness to life, meeting life with more enthusiasm than it can deliver to us. For it's our presence, our vision, our unique contributions that make life what it is, what it can be, what the Maya visionaries knew it always was and always would be. For it is through the visionary awareness of being authentically human and bringing enthusiasm into our lives that we will manifest our greatest spiritual presence. If this virtual expedition inspired you and you want to see more, give it a like and subscribe. It helps the channel grow, and I would appreciate your support. See you next time here on Expeditions into Spirit.